r/ProRevenge.
Do shady thing, fire my boss, hide millions from your client? I don't think so. Forgive me if this is long. This happened a while ago, but it's still so fresh in my mind. I left college with a business degree in one hand and no job in the other. And like so many colleges, the promises of alumni willing to give jobs to graduates could not have been further from the truth. So I had to seek out my start from the bottom. I found a good job in operations at a company, I can't say who without giving it away. Had a great boss, who taught me pretty much everything I needed to know. Work was great and the money was good. I need to explain how the business works so you can understand how the plan worked. The corporate office was in California and we were not. There are a lot of things that went on at this company, and I can't get into all of them because it would just take away from the story, but let's just say they had a very Stratton Oakmont vibe when it came to sales. I started out worked in operations with some of the smaller clients, but with some help from my boss, was able to climb the ladder rather quickly to the point of being over all the operations and order processing for the firm. We had a very large client, 90% of the company's business. The way it worked was we had two sets of sales reps, TSRs and CSRs. TSRs were the heavy hitters who reached out to the other big businesses and tech firms to extend their warranties on a product. They made real good money. The CSRs were more of the mom and pop crowd and the inbound sales calls for those that wanted to extend their warranties. The reps were all given codes that associates the client's files with theirs, so if someone did a renewal automatically, they would get paid as it was their client. Pretty sweet gig. The client hired the firm to be the middleman for their B2B as they handled all of their everyday clients. For every $100 that came into our firm, 18% or $18 would be for the company and the rest would be sent to the clients with the warranties activated. Most of the clients paid by CC or PO with a wire transfer, but there would also be a good amount of checks each week that would need to be processed. A little while after I started, the client check portion was now going to be overseen by one of the sales managers. Didn't really faze me because I was working on the smaller accounts. Since we were a publicly traded company, all the sales reps' orders had to go to operations to be fulfilled. They weren't allowed to process them on their own. This is when things started going downhill. My boss at the time was given temporary access to the financials as they were hiring a new CFO and he had a background with it. We went to lunch like we had done plenty of times before, but he seemed different. When I asked him if something was wrong, he told me that something looked off with our biggest client for one of the accounts. He wanted to make sure before he said anything to the higher-ups. While this was going on, I had been offered the chance to be our new compliance officer, which means I would need to make sure everything was on the up and up. Soon after, I come in to find out that my boss was just terminated for a multitude of reasons, all of which had to be untrue because he was a pretty well-liked guy with not just with the company but with our client as well. As I log into my terminal, I see that before he left, he had given me admin access to his files. Here's where things started to pop off. Remember those checks that clients were sending in to renew their warranties? Well, we were cashing them all right. Apparently we just weren't adding those renewals to their products in the system. That would have triggered a payout to our client who, as you remember, would be getting 82% of that money. Instead, they were cashing the checks, keeping the money, and using the interest in the accounts. Yes, in the mid-2000s banks actually paid interest to cover losses in their collections department. It was wild to see that this was happening, and something had to be done. So I hatched a plan. First things first, secure a new job cause it won't be a fun place to work after this. Done. My previous boss knew of other companies that would scoop me up. Put in my notice, and stated in my exit interview that I just couldn't be a part of what was happening, even though HR was in on this. I wanted it on the record. Next, get approval for overtime for all the operations crew to come in on a Saturday, and double pay them. They arrive early Saturday, obviously not too thrilled as to why they are there. But when I explain that if they complete the task, not only so they get their overtime, but they get nice bonuses, they were much happier. They spent the entire day applying all of those checks dated back years to the client accounts. We are talking millions of dollars. When all the sales reps arrived Monday, they were shocked to hell. Not only did they meet their weekly goals before picking up the phones, they made their monthly and quarterly goals too. 2 weeks into the new quarter. Cheers. Partying. Yelling. Screaming. Celebrating. Except sales management. They went from being really excited, to skeptical, to confused, to oh shit in about 2 hours. They realized where it must have come from. Because not only did the company hit all these sales, since it had been over a day, the client came into work Monday to see a very nice payday in their system as well. And like anyone, would have questions, and says they are coming out to congratulate the team on such great numbers. So management starts scrambling because they can't figure out how this happened, and all under my boss's old login. On my last day I arrive and in the lobby. I've got my Boxster for the last of my things, Guy walks up as is waiting for the elevator with me and we strike up conversation. He notices my box and jokes about getting fired, and I just tell him I had a great opportunity come up so I decided to leave before shit hits the fan. We laughed. Really nice down-to-earth guy. He realizes we are getting off on the same floor. He asks if I work for X, I say yes. He asks where, I tell him operations and he reveals that he is the CEO of our client, Gulp. We go our separate ways. Client shows up and there is a big party. Afterwards, the client says that they would love to get a breakdown of where most of the sales came from so they can allocate more money to that department. Management says sure, but it made up a lie about how they can't share client payment info due to regulations, blah blah blah. Cue my exit from the company. 2 weeks go by and I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize, so I let it go to VM. When I get off work I checked it to find out it was the CEO of the client where I used to work. He has had something come up and would like to talk to me. Of course I'm nervous as hell, but I call him back and he picks up on the first ring and we get to chatting for a bit and he finally just asks me, why did you leave? I tell him I had a great opportunity come up. He doesn't buy it and says that apparently my comment about shit hitting the fan really stuck with him and he thinks something more is going on. So after a little more prodding from him, I tell him just look at collections and that's all I can say. He thanks me and I hang up. 2 days later, he pulled the plug on the account. Apparently my old company tried to threaten him with a lawsuit for pulling the account 3 years early. He replied with, that's fine, because when I show the courts that I have the evidence that you committed fraud. Corporate came in and cleaned house. All of management was fired within the day. 1 month later, my friends and I had a very memorable trip in Vegas, all courtesy of our old client. Edit. Wow. Very surprised at all the responses and positive messages. Thank you all very much. Epilogue. Best part, I guess this should have been part of the story. My old boss was an adopted kid, treated his adopted parents great, while their real kids didn't, and when they passed, they left him all their money. All of it. This was about 2008. He was in a weird place, because he loved his parents and was really close to them. He went to his church to pray for his parents and for what do with this new landfall of money. He loved working, but didn't need to anymore. He left the church and went to a bar, because who doesn't? He sits next to a guy who, and this is almost out of a movie, is a developer and has run out of money to finish his development because it's 2008 and no one is loaning money. They get to talking and he thinks maybe this is a sign. I'll speed this up because I've got to run to work. But he invests in the guy's development by buying all the houses, dirt cheap at the time, and now lives off the residual income from all of them being rentals. Life sucks because so many people do shitty things and get away with it that it's great when good things happen to good people.
A response to the post.
Greater than as I log into my terminal I see that before he left, he had given me admin access to his files. Damn, that was an almost movie-level plot line.
A response to this comment.
It's really only missing a soundtrack and a few special effects at this point.
A response to the post.
God, I love honest people. My company has spent a ton of money with an independent purchasing agent. Why do we use him? I'm glad you asked. It is because he was fired for giving us evidence that his previous company was stiffing us. As soon as we found out and got his contact information, we put him in business in charge of our purchasing for that country. He used this to set up a new business where he is making bank helping companies like us, and what's great is that even though we are now a relatively small account for him, he still gives us his full attention as we helped him early on.
A response to the post.
I don't understand it honestly. Where did the money come from? Why did nobody ever notice no warranties?
OP's response to this comment.
Oh, there were people that noticed. When a customer would call in about their warranties and they said they had paid, the rep would create a ticket. They had already sent in a check for the warranty. And instead of activating the account and sending the client their money, they just cashed the check and didn't do anything. The sales manager would just activate the warranty and backdate it. I'm sorry. I tried putting as much info in the story without anyone falling asleep. Ha ha ha.
A response to the post.
What a boss-ass move. Any updates on your old boss?